The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, concordant body, appendant body, Masonic Authority, or craftsmanonline.com.
Welcome back to the Craftsman Online Podcast, the only Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce, and another first year on the podcast. We have a father-son episode as we get ready to talk about a tradition in morality and virtue with the Brockbanks. Now, for most of our listeners, you're going to be familiar with Brother Matthew Brockbank. He's the driving force behind our Black Friday holiday special episode, which I do look forward to every year during that holiday shopping season. Matt's the one who has some unique finds that he likes to share with our listeners, but he also has his own unique takes on what he feels some of the challenges and obstacles that Freemasonry is facing as we attempt to bridge that gap beyond the millennials into future generations of Masons.
This is a pro Matt podcast.
Yes, I know that he does. So
the numbers don't lie. Right.
Also joining us is Matt's father, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Brockbank, who is known in my jurisdiction as the Dean of Brockbank University over his 50 years as an active member in the craft. So, Michael, let's start there. Why don't you walk our listeners through how you became a Freemason?
My start was because my father was a Mason. And so when I grew up, that was something that I looked at, saw him doing. And oh, that's interesting, right? And then when I graduated college, graduated law school, became a lawyer, like, okay, now I'm going to do something professional in the town, in the city. And I became a Rotarian. Why? Because he was a Rotarian. Became a Mason. Why? Because he was a Mason. It was something to be integrated into the professional life of the city we live in. And it had good ideas. I was happy with the concept. I was happy with the people. I was 26, I think, out of law school. So yeah, 23, 26.
I was 21.
So what intrigues me is looking back, the difference between 21 and 26 at that time doesn't seem like a big one, but later in life, there's a massive difference. 21, you're just getting out of college. 26, you should have been kind of established in your career at that point as a young adult. Michael, can you kind of walk us through what it was like being a young man, 21 years old, and a Master Mason?
Well, it was much easier for me. I wasn't married at the time. And so I was a young bachelor, man about town.
A gay blade.
And yeah, in the day when you could say it that way. Masonry, from the time of my first entrance in 76, 75, 76, has shrunk. We went through, as you can see from different diagrams on the basement of our lodge wall, the growth of our particular lodge in St. George's from 20 people to 900 people, and then back down now to 60 or 70 people. There's been tremendous changes in Masonry. From my beginning to here, Masonry has shrunk. There were 800 lodges. There were 300,000 Masons. No longer. Right? So Masonry has to evolve and change and go with times because we're in a different philosophy. In those days, your way of meeting people, your way of having social activity was to go to a meeting. You went to a face-to-face meeting of some sort, whether it was name the particular group that you want, but you went someplace and had a meeting. Nowadays, people open up screens.
One of the things that I find so special about your story is that, Michael, you've been a Mason for 50 years now in New York State, and Matt has been a Mason for almost 20. Together, 70 years of Masonic experience, but that's today. Let's go back to when this all started. Can you recall when you and Matt had your first conversation about Freemasonry?
Yeah, we had to chase him out of the room when we were doing the catechism.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Dad would take me on trips to Utica, and I would get to tag along, and then there would be a point where this man would leave a child in a room alone. No, I'm just kidding. CPS, where are you? I was left alone with a computer and a sword. but I got to see a lot of Masonry from, a young age and definitely an outsider perspective. And I think Masonry, no matter who you ask, from an outsider's perspective, is very mysterious. What is going on? Like, interesting. There's a lot that you want to know. So right off the bat, especially as a kid, right? Kids are just by nature curious creatures. And that sparked an interest. But Dad was always very open about, what Freemasonry was and so on and so forth. So I was able to learn from him. And if I had questions, he would be able to answer as many as he could. Yeah, from about the time that I got to college, and I joined a fraternity in college, so natural progression, that I wanted to join Masonry, smack dab. But when I turned 21, I was on the phone like the next day.
I was initially, after working in the Grand Line for several years with most worshipful Roswell Spitz, I got to be a trustee of the Masonic Home and director of the medical labs. Matthew got to see those things. He got to see a place in Utica where we have a Masonic Home that was built at a time at the turn of the century, 1900, right, when there was no welfare.
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, the campus was nice, and I would run through the steam tunnels underneath. I would literally just run, so maybe he was leaving the child alone in the steam tunnel. I mean, I knew kind of what Masonry was in terms of being a quote unquote, society with secrets. So I knew that this was like something special. But I didn't know, how special it was until I was a little bit older.
So, Matt, can you help me out? Like, what is it like growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s in clearly a Masonic household? Like, who were your dad's friends? What are some of the moments you remember spending in your neighborhood as a kid?
That's all Dad had as friends. His best friend who we would spend almost every weekend with. Yeah, Roger Bricknell. We would spend literally every weekend at their house or at ours, and we considered him, my uncle, and he was a Mason. And Dad's other friends were Masons. And when we went to Utica, we would spend time with his friends there who were also Masons, like Lou Rosenthal. And everyone we knew was just a Mason. It was like, okay, I guess everyone's a Mason. That's the way life works.
You're growing up in a house that's clearly with a Mason. Your dad's friends are all Masons. You turn 21. What was the conversation about becoming a Mason at that point? I really doubt that your dad was sitting there, with your birthday cake, a card, and a petition to join St. George's Lodge.
Well, no, there was never any pressure. He never pressured me. Actually, Dad's never pressured me to do literally anything. He's always been the kind of guy who would, endorse something that, he thought was worthy, but he would never pressure me into doing anything. It was always, I had to come to him with requests or with, whether it be sports or whether it be theater or whatever it was. I always had to go to him. And maybe he got it. I don't know if you got it from Masonry, which, has the tenet of, you accept people who come to knock at the door first. You don't open it for them. They have to come knock. He never once suggested it.
I was enthusiastic afterwards. I don't want to say to myself, you ought to be a Mason. That's me. I cringe at that kind of activity.
As a father, Michael, I can totally relate to how it feels when you hope that your son follows in your steps, but you don't want to push them. My son's 20, has not yet really shown an interest in Freemasonry, but fingers are crossed that someday he's going to ask the question and we can go through that together. But for you as Matt's dad, there's several points during Matthew's Masonic journey through all of the degrees. Was there a certain moment that sticks out as being particularly special or meaningful to you?
Well, for me, I think it was more, rather than the Master Mason degree, it was the first degree. You are now going to become a Mason. You are going to be a member of this fraternity. And hopefully you'll be a member forever. But you're taking the first step of something that could be with you for the rest of your life, as it was for your grandfather and as it was for your father. That to me was more significant even than the raising.
No, it was definitely the third degree. I mean, nothing hits like the third degree. I mean, especially when you have your father raising you. I mean, yeah, that was by far. I mean, that moment is like seared into my mind. First degree, and maybe I'm a little jaded because I've seen so many first degrees and participated in so many first degrees that it kind of, it washes along with the other ones. But, third degree, that one, that one's special.
Craftsman Online Podcast. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. My guest this week, Right Worshipful Brother Michael and Brother Matthew Brockbank. Yes, a father-son team. And just having this conversation with Michael and Matthew makes me want to make this kind of a recurring theme episode for every season, is to talk to the father-son combos, because I do think it's really special when you get to share something like this through life, the mystic bond. Of course, there's always that father-son relationship, but now in the fraternity, the deeper bond, like that's pretty cool. A lot of father-sons have the relationships where you kind of hope that maybe they follow the same sports teams that you like, or go to your college, or develop that interest in art or society or culture or whatever that dad was into. But becoming a Freemason, that's kind of special. And it's refreshing to hear between Matthew and Michael that you had a normal life at home with Freemasonry as a part of it, that there wasn't a pressure from Matt to join the same lodge as dad. And
well, there was never a Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker moment when he asks, come with me and rule New York State with an iron fist. There was never that conversation, but there was a lot of coaching for the degrees and making sure that I was proficient, because as you well know, and by the way, all this Brockbank University talk is all secondhand to me. I know nothing of it because dad and I had to do ours over the phone because I was, remember, 21, still in college. I think I was a junior in college at the time. So all of our coaching was strictly over the phone. And eventually, I had to do it in person. Dad never administered the tests for me. He always made, just even worse, I think, he made me do it in front of the worshipful master for the first and second degree, who I had barely known or met or, knew nothing about at the time. It felt like the weight of the world was on top of me. Here's the worst part. I didn't get like a chance to do this. He said, tonight's your degree. I had to do it right before the degree. So if I failed, there's nothing I could have done. Yeah, going home early. Yeah.
so if we're going to do a podcast with Michael and Matthew Brockbank, we got to talk about ritual, because that term is just synonymous with your last name. You're both known as extremely well-prepared and excellent performers of Masonic ritual. And I just have to wonder, do you think that has to do with the DNA that you both share?
I'm sure it's in there somewhere. I can memorize a piece of work and I can give it. And I did plays when I was younger as well. I think some of us it comes easier to some of us than others. I think everybody can do it. Some people do it easier, or it appears for them easier to do than others. Okay. And I think I have that blessing. I think Matthew has it as well.
It's weird, but big reveal for the podcast, first time. I am nervous every single time I give it. And I've given it probably almost 40 times now. And I am nervous every single time. And I know, and I can feel my palms get a little sweaty. And I'm like, all right, I'm up next. But once you get rolling, it's a story. And it's a story you told before. And it comes out. And you're right, though. When some people do, they listen to that little voice. But I found that if you try to listen to the voice, you're not working, you're not focusing on the work, and then you flub.
Yeah.
So I find that it's better to not recite your part while you're sitting and waiting. Maybe on the drive there, but that's it. As soon as you walk in the door, stop thinking about it and let it come out. Because as Dad has alluded to, you either know it or you don't. And as we've talked about, Mike, when you give a lengthy monologue, if you make a mistake somewhere, no one's really going to know because they don't, know the piece. Obviously, you're giving it to them for the first time.
I'm curious, Matt, is it helpful for you to rehearse ritual or just go through it with your dad?
No.
Really?
He notices when I sleep.
Yeah, I do. I pay attention. I'm like, I don't think it's not nerves anymore around Dad. I mean, it was never really nerves around Dad. For me, it's the nerves of messing up for the participant or for the listener. I want them to have a good experience. Yes.
You want to do a good job for the candidate.
And then no offense to you, Dad, but I don't care what you think about it.
I'm over on this side.
I'm not there for you. I'm there for them.
That's correct. We all are.
Yeah.
Those of us who are performing.
Yeah.
Are not performing it for the people on the sideline.
Yeah.
We're doing it for the person who's at the altar. for the person who's in the chair
Right.
afterwards.
Yeah.
I give a bunch of times I've given the investiture service, or I've given the installation service, and I walk down and I give that obligation from memory. I think it's important for that person that he get that obligation from memory, not be read to it.
We have a lot of interesting titles and terms that are used in Freemasonry. And Michael, you've talked about this. When you do the investitures, you always include that part where you explain to the public, the sign of fidelity, so mote it be, some of the other things that we do in lodges, right worshipful, for example, as a title. Another term that is used in our fraternity when we talk about a father, son, or a family lineage in the craft is Lewis. Does that term have any special meaning to you?
It doesn't resonate to me because I didn't know the reason for its giving or its announcement. I understand its principle, and its principle is a good one. I mean, I think it's a nice way of doing it. I have two thoughts about it. On the one hand, I think it's an honor. Somebody has become a Mason and that we are together in the fraternity. That's a great thing. But I don't want somebody to think that, well, you don't have a Lewis or you can't be a Lewis because your father isn't a. That to me, I cringe a little bit. To me, it's much more important, are you a good Mason? Whether or not we're a father-son team is a wonderful thing. I think it's a blessing. Me, anyway. I think to Matthew. But I don't feel as comfortable with the advertising of it as some others do. I recognize that we have it. I got the tool from that, but fine. It's a good thing. And I can wear one too, I guess, because my father was a Mason. But that to me is not what Masonry is about. To me, it's about doing a good job, especially people who are coming in who are candidates or people who are participating. I think that's much more important than what we wear on our shirt.
I agree with that point, and I agree with his previous one that having a Masonic father does not a good Mason make. So,
yeah,
the jewel it's nice, but it is, it's a smidge pretentious.
Right.
Smidge. Yeah, smidge.
I mean, it's nice to honor it.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to honor it. That I have a father and a son. I'm in the middle. Right. All Masons. Oh, great idea.
Yeah.
Right? So we should have a 3-person pin.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
So, Michael, I know that you've listened to the Craftsman Online podcast.
Yes, I have.
Especially the episodes with Matt. We know that he has hit the most listened to podcast, ranking #1 on our countdown a few years back. And the joke was probably because you played it and stopped and started about 1,000 times.
we hypothesized that it was 999 of them were.
There's a little dot in the upstate New York.
I want to talk about some of the challenges and concerns that Matt has brought up about our fraternity, as the craft is always looking to turn the corner for future generations. Do you ever take a step back and go, hey guys, this is the same stuff we were literally talking about 50 years ago?
I don't think we had the same conversation that Matthew had. I think Matthew wants us to look more outside the fraternity, put a greater presence into the charitable aspect of Masonry. I look at it more as a traditional idea that we become a member of a society unto ourselves. We will do some charitable work, but that's not the purpose of Masonry. It's to be ourselves within our group. Our charity is internal. If we help the community, we will also do that. I like the idea of the catechism, the ritual, and learning it. I think the effort of doing that for anybody is transformative. I am extremely grateful to the Grand Lodge of New York that we changed our rules, however, because we've taken the pressure off of the 6-week learning curve. It used to be in Masonry that you couldn't go into the lodge until you had your 3rd degree. So you were a master Mason. 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3 degrees on basic Mason. So until you were a master Mason, you couldn't enter the lodge. Right? So there was a huge push to get you through. Huge push to learn this, get this down. And I think that was a huge mistake. I like the English system, which we now have adopted. Be open on the 1st degree. You can come and be in our lodge, your 1st degree Mason for 1 year, 2 years, 6 weeks, whatever. And when you want to take your 2nd, then we will give you a 2nd. when you're ready for when you've proved proficiency. And some people learn it in 6 weeks, which is fine. I've worked with men, some of them older sometimes, taking them a year, sometimes a year and a half. I think they remember it forever. Right? Not because of me, but because of the effort and the satisfaction and the actual production of doing it and accomplishing something. Now, on the other side of the coin, which Matthew, I think, is one, is, that's not what makes a great Mason. Right? The fact that you were able to memorize 24 pages of arcane material.
Dad's shivering over here. I don't think that memorizing, means jack squat. And that's coming from a guy who prides himself on memorizing a 30-minute monologue. I don't think the memory has anything to do with it, and we've talked about this, I know, in the other episodes, but I love the idea of being able to read it, because that gives you the tool to understand it later. Memorizing it has no bearing on how well you understand it.
Right.
Memory is simply just the words are in my brain and now they're coming out of my mouth. That is literally it. Now, I will even give you a little bit of memory, though. I will say maybe, signs, token words, scripts, memorize those, but not 20, 30-minute conversations back and forths. To me, means nothing. But I would compromise with that middle ground of learning the cipher, sign, script, token, word. I think that also satisfies my desire to see good men become Masons without unnecessary barriers.
If you did not need to ever know that as an officer, and if you can carry a book with you and read it, I'll agree with you. And why would you ever memorize anything? But we don't do that in Masonic. We're not supposed to. We're supposed to open a Masonic lodge from memory.
But you could have a book. I don't think it changes much. I don't think it changes anything, honestly. But here's the thing. Who is listening and thinking about, the opening and closing differently, whether the person reading had a book or not had a book? As a person sitting on the side, I close my eyes, which some of the members are doing anyway, right? It sounds the same. The words are going into my ear holes and they're resonating in the exact same way. All right, put it this way. Masonry is not about the speaker. It's about the listener. It is about how do I absorb what I'm hearing, not how do I say it.
Right.
And I think that means so much more. I will say this, all the times that I'm speaking the historical lecture, okay. But when I'm listening to myself and rehearsing it, and through the rehearsal, listening to myself do it, that's when I'm like absorbing new information and pulling more from, because I'm listening.
And ergo, you should be memorizing the ritual.
But memorizing doesn't matter, is what I'm saying. It's not the it's not the output, it's the input.
Yes, and by the same token, if you are memorizing your first degree material, you are also doing the same thing you just described. And when you're reading it and putting it in your head, you're absorbing it. And in fact, every person, I shouldn't say every person, everybody that I can remember, maybe they're just pulling my leg or being nice to me. I've had innumerable people come up to me and say, it was tough. I kind of didn't like it at the beginning, but having done it, I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I accomplished.
I will not take that away from you. I do agree. A lot of people do find a benefit in it.
And we don't require it to be done in any pressurized time period. That's the thing that I think is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I think back to grade school, though, when you're taking an exam,
yes,
you can either memorize the material and then just pull it out of your head and mark those answers correct on the exam, or you can really understand it.
Yeah.
Right. It's one thing to know, when the Ides of March happen. It's another thing to know why they happen. And I think that's the difference.
It's when I am teaching people, we're always talking about it.
That's good.
People ask, why did this happen? And why are we doing this? And why are we saying that? Okay.
It's a Craftsman Online podcast. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. We have a father and son episode with Right Worshipful Michael and his son, brother, Matthew Brockbank. Before the break, we were getting into a discussion on ritual, and it's interesting because both of you are known throughout our district and state as being excellent ritualists, but how you approach it is a little bit different. Matt kind of mentioned it more of like a performance. Michael, how do you feel about it?
I see it as a play.
Yeah.
It's no different than a play. And you've seen different people put on a play. There are thousands of people that have done Hamlet, thousands of people that have done, King Lear, whatever. But they're reading from a script and they've learned some lines and they're giving it. And you're watching them giving it. And that's the beauty of it. So if a person gives it really well, I've heard many people compliment about you. And sometimes I think you're just trying to butter me up. That's fine. But at others, I can tell they're absolutely sincere. You do a wonderful job. You really do. And that you can't, I don't believe, get from reading a book.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't think you can give it reading a book.
Yeah.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, you'd probably lose some of the showmanship. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Spontaneity, the understanding, and the ability to look at the people that you're talking to. And it's also, in my opinion, an excellent way to prepare people to be officers of the lodge. Because at each station, you have some rituals to give. You have some part in a degree to give. And if you learn your basic catechism of the first, second, third degree, you're able to do it.
I can't help but think the conversations that you must have at home, around the dinner table, or just, maybe texting back and forth or a traditional phone call about Masonry. I know that whenever I get around brothers and friends, my wife always warns me, don't be talking about lodge stuff, and that's what Masons do talk about. Is that what kind of dominates your conversation, and does your wife just get up and leave the room?
Yeah, right? It is Masonry every day.
Yeah, we talked about Masonry when he was going through it. We talked about Masonry, I think, when he was starting to go to other lodges. We talked about whether Masonry should put a larger or lesser degree of effort on charitable work.
Yeah, those conversations, the heavier conversations came later. At first, it was all about, how does Masonry work and what are these different, bodies and what are these different degrees and, do you get a special sword and a ring eventually? But once all that kind of dissipates, then, and once you're in the lodge for a couple of years and you see the inner workings of things, and you kind of, in some lodges, like Mike, you and I know, like once you start to see the cracks, then you start to have the harder conversations about, what are the, small p politics of the lodge, and, what can we be doing with all this money? I mean, then, the real life questions, the adult questions, if you will, start to come up. And then, we would start to talk about like just our different feelings about Masonry or about the lodge and how it operated. I don't think that a new Mason, regardless of age, so I don't say young Mason, but I don't think a new Mason can fully understand all aspects of the workings of a lodge until they've been there for a couple of years, because there's just so much and how they interact with Grand Lodge. I mean, unless you're doing nothing else with your life and you devote all of it to Masonry immediately, it's really hard to pick up all the different aspects, because you can't just become master of the lodge or an officer immediately. You have to, work. Well, we have the tradition of working through line. So you don't see everything until you start to go through line, or you start to meet and talk to, who's on the Hall Association, who's a trustee, what is the business of the lodge? And then you start to see a really full behind the scenes picture. And then those conversations started happening. But at first it was strictly, Masonic. What is this?
How does it work?
Yeah.
Because there are in almost innumerable number of bodies.
Yeah.
And I say, why did that happen? Because Mason, well, two reasons. Number one, the Masonic Lodge itself is very tightly controlled, very, very top-down militaristic, little group. And Masonry, for whatever reason, really adopted the temperance movement. Absolutely no alcohol, right? So it's very tight and no fun. I mean, we want to have fun, but the lodge itself doesn't lend itself to that. Like, silence, right? Spoken only speak to the master, don't speak to another person, right? No, like, okay. First, they developed one group. First, other Masonic orders, but also the whole Shriner. It was an invented group, completely invented. Why? Have fun and raise money and give to charity.
And clowns, don't forget.
So, Michael, Matthew, I've sincerely enjoyed our time together for this episode, and I'll just let our listener know that we do have some bonus time with you. You've been so generous to open up your calendars. We'll have a special episode on Thursday, a subscriber extra. If you are not following us on Patreon and you want to hear it, please open up the show description and the notes for this episode. You'll see the link to activate your trial membership, get 7 free days of Craftsman Online on Patreon, ad-free listening, and also access to the subscriber extra episode with the Brockbank brothers. Michael, before we wrap up this episode, I want to get you out of here on this question. What's your advice for the next generation of Masons listening to this episode?
You mean other than proficiency means proficiency? Other than that? So if we give, that's a given. Other than that, I believe that Masonry can go forward. I think we should not be discouraged by the fact that we have fewer members. There are many other things trying to attract other people, our group, which is young people, many other things. We are going to attract those people who ultimately, because they know us, or because they know of the group, or they know of a particular position, they're going to like or take a peek at Masonry. And we need to be there for them. But I do not believe we should give it away. There are things in the ritual which are good. I think fraternity is great. You can have good friendship. I think I've met people in there that I like. It's a way for younger people to meet older people on, no offense, on the level. I mean, we often say that in Masonry. But younger people, even though Matthew is my son, he can meet other people my age, and we're all brothers. Mm-hmm. And that's, for a younger man, that's a unique opportunity. Here's a place where you don't have to say, sir, or whatever. No, it's brother.
I don't think Masonry knows what Masonry wants to be. Mm-hmm. I think every brother has an idea of what they would like to see, maybe in their lodge or grand lodge, maybe small changes here and there. But, Masonry in general, and maybe that's tough because we are all separate, bodies in the United States. Every grand lodge is its own state, or other way around. Sorry, every state has its own grand lodge. But I don't think Masonry in general kind of knows what it wants to be. I think it is having an identity crisis and trying to find its place in the 21st century amongst
all the
Dad,
other
right. Well, and I think Dad uses a fun word there, arcane. Okay, yeah. This is a Ford Model T amongst the Teslas. This is a parchment scroll amongst iPads. What does it do? What does it offer? What is special about it? It has to decide, where it wants to fit in, and then once it does decide that, then it has to really promote and push that, and not try to be things that it isn't.
Right.
And that's fine. If Masonry wants to be, draconian isn't the right word, but arcane or just archaic or the old, if it wants to be a traditional institution, then just be a traditional institution. Really lean into the secrecy and quiet everything down, or not, or advertise and be out there. You can't use both social media and George Washington's Bible at the same time, right? These are things from two different worlds. Pick one or the other. And if Masonry wants to be new, modern, and different, then be new, modern, and different and adapt to the times, or not. Mm-hmm. I would love if it just picked one, but I feel like we're constantly just teetering on this fence and we're not picking a position and leaning into that position. Because I think there are merits to both sides, kind of full arcane. I think that would be neat. I would get a kick out of it. I think that'd be super. Or not, or be out there, be a force for good in the public sphere, be a brand. really, be a brand, but it can't be both. So I think, again, as I say often, only time will tell, and we will see, where Masonry wants to go. But what I don't see though is I don't see any lodge or Grand Lodge making that decision in a firm way,
Right.
whether it be from other states or New York. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying that I don't see anyone, really putting their foot down and setting themselves on that course. I think everyone, all the Grand Lodges, even from other countries, are still just who's going to move first. And then maybe if they find and they see success in that, they will follow suit. But, I think it's an interesting time to be a Mason because the future is definitely up in the air.
I would throw out on the table the concept of the observant lodge.
Oh,
That's a lodge which observes the old style and the idea of the ritual, the idea of learning, and that can exist. I think you can have different lodges even in the same Grand Lodge. Some are observant, some are not.
Thanks again to my guest this week, Right Worshipful Michael and his son, brother Matthew Brockbank. You're going to get some extra time with them this Thursday with our Patreon subscriber extra episode. If you're not following Craftsman Online on Patreon and you want to join us, you can open up the notes for this episode in that show description. Bang, there's a link to start your free 7-day trial on Patreon. Hey, see if that ad-free listening experience and also getting access to all of our back episodes with subscriber extras is a good fit for you. I'm Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. I always enjoy our time together. We're back with a fresh episode on Monday featuring a first-timer, Worshipful Brother John Wilsey, who put together a 3-year plan to turn his lodge around. We get into lodge revitalization next week. Until then, let peace and harmony prevail.